Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I have been gone for a very long time. A lot of things have happened in the course of a month. I just want to apologize really quickly for our air conditioner. It makes a lot of noise, but it gets too hot in here for the baby if it's off, so I can't turn it off. And also he is in his little sleeper thing and it vibrates, so it makes a lot of noise. So if you can hear either one of those, I'm really sorry. Today I'm going to go over my labor and delivery story. I did not get to film my labor and delivery. I was a little too preoccupied. I had been going through not labor for 3 days, but I'd been at the hospital for 3 days. I hadn't slept for 3 days. I was a mess, and Damian is not one to pick up a camera, and it kind of was just nice to have it be between us for our first baby. So maybe with our next baby we'll end up doing it, but for this one you'll just have to stick with the story. To start off, I have everything written down on my computer, so if I look down, that's why, and that's why my face is also glowing. So to start off, we're gonna start on a Thursday. I didn't give birth to him until a Sunday, so that's a very big difference. So we're gonna start on Thursday night. Well, Thursday during the day we're gonna start. I woke up and I was not feeling good at all. I ended up getting sick everywhere, and I also was getting sick out of another enemy. That's a huge TMI. So I basically could not keep any food down. I didn't have any liquids in my body, and obviously being pregnant you have to have both of those two things to have a healthy pregnancy. So I decided that I was going to go down to the hospital to just get fluids and some Zofran to make me stop getting sick. Basically this is what you're supposed to do, because I was 37 weeks and a couple days, and you really don't want anything to happen in those later weeks. So I did end up going down to the hospital just to get IV fluids. I wasn't in labor. I was having like Braxton Hicks contractions, but I wasn't having full-blown contractions. So that's the only thing I went down there for, was to get fluids and medicine. So they checked me while I was down there just to make sure that I wasn't in labor, and I was only 2 centimeters, which I knew I really wasn't in labor. I was having Braxton Hicks contractions. They weren't actual contractions. So we just had to stay there so I could get fluids and they could give me some Zofran, and then I could go to sleep because I hadn't slept because I was getting sick. So fast forward to the next day. I wasn't getting sick anymore, but I didn't get much sleep because I still felt really sick. So I maybe got an hour or two on Thursday night. Fast forward to Friday afternoon, Damian was at work. I've been on maternity leave since like November, so I haven't been working. So I was having contractions around 3 o'clock. He gets home around 5. So I just kind of kept track of them. They were a lot worse than my Braxton Hicks contractions. They were not full-blown contractions yet though, but they were 45 minutes apart, lasting a minute for way over an hour. So I waited till Damian got home. We ended up waiting until after dinner just so I had eaten something, because they don't give you food when you're in labor. So I ate something, and then we ended up going down to the hospital. By this time my contractions were a lot worse. They were very painful. So on the way there, it's an hour drive to the hospital I was supposed to deliver at, so it was not nice. So we ended up getting there, and they, you walk up to their triage and everything, and they checked me. I was only 2 centimeters still, but I was having steady contractions, and they were contractions that were putting me into labor. For my doctor's office, there's obviously 4 to 5 weeks in a month, and each midwife gets a week, and then the doctors get a week. So it was a midwife that was on call, and she said, well, you're not in labor, you're just dehydrated. No. And so she wanted to, since they checked me and I was only 2 centimeters, so they let me walk around to try to progress. My contractions were getting just intensely worse. They weren't slowing down at all. It wasn't these fake little things anymore. It was full-blown contractions. And so I walked around for an hour, then I went back and they checked me, and I was still at 2. So the midwife said like, no, like you're just dehydrated, you're not in labor, your contractions aren't bad enough. And my contractions were bad enough where I honestly could have probably smacked someone across the face for telling me that. Luckily she didn't come in the room and tell me that. So just like being not taken seriously was not going well for me. So they said, okay, we'll keep you for another hour and then we'll check you again. And if you haven't progressed, then we're just gonna send you home. If you have, we'll keep you. So after she told me that I'm not in labor, I said, can I just walk around more? Like, it's easier to get through contractions when I can walk around. They let me get up and walk around, and they're supposed to check you every 2 hours at this hospital. They were checking me every hour, which was whatever. They let me walk around for 20 minutes after checking me, and so they checked me 30 minutes after I had been checked the first time. So I didn't have enough time to progress, obviously, and so when she checked me I was about 3 centimeters. So I had progressed in a half an hour, but it wasn't enough to be at a 4, and usually they don't keep you until you're a 4. Well, I was in labor, and the nurses were like, you're in labor. I don't understand why she's like acting like you're not. You're just in early labor, so you're not to 4 yet. So the midwife came in and said that everyone's fingers are different sizes, and she wouldn't really know how far along unless she checked me, but she didn't want to check me. So she knew she was wrong that I wasn't in labor, but she didn't want to admit it. So she wanted to admit me into an observation room to just make sure like I wasn't in labor. So she ended up checking me into an observation room, and I was going to be leaving the next morning, which it was already around like 3 o'clock in the morning. So we got into the room. They gave me 2 pills of Stadol because I hadn't slept and I was in like that much pain. They obviously can't give you an epidural until they check you into the hospital and until you're 4 centimeters. So that wasn't like an option, and originally I wasn't going for the epidural, I was going for a water birth. So they checked me in for observation, but I wasn't allowed to walk around, so I wasn't progressing at all. My contractions were slowing down because I wasn't allowed to move. I had to sit in the same position. I wasn't allowed to like recline my bed. I had to like sit like at an angle like this. Like I wasn't allowed to do anything, and I was having contractions every 45 minutes still, so I was uncomfortable. Like I wanted to just scream. Like Damian was over on the little couch bed thing, and he was just like sitting there like, oh, like why aren't they giving you anything? So I let this go on for like a while, and I eventually called the nurse in and asked her if she could call the midwife and ask if I was allowed to have anything else for pain, because the Stadol didn't work at all. It ended up not working on me even when they used it after I had given birth. I asked her if there was anything else that they could give me just so that I could go to sleep for a little while, so that if I did have to give birth I could actually help them and push him out. Because there was no way that I would have been able to push him out without sleeping at least like a little while. So she called the midwife said I wasn't allowed to have anything else. She offered for me to go in the shower to just try to get like hot water on my back because I was having back labor. I had back labor the whole entire time I was in labor. So in the shower, my contractions they calmed down pain level wise while I was in the shower because I had the shower on the hottest it could possibly go and directly on my back. So as soon as I got out of the shower, like as soon as I stepped out into like the cold environment, I had probably the worst contraction of that night. And then they just came on faster and faster. I let it go for probably another hour. They put me in a rocking chair to try to get me more comfortable. It didn't work at all. I finally called the nurse in and said, if she's not going to let you give me anything, I want to go home because I'm sitting here not being able to move. I can't even like move from the position I'm in sitting down. So she ended up calling the midwife. The midwife said that they needed to check me. I was still at 3 centimeters, so I hadn't progressed because I was sitting down the whole entire time. And so they ended up letting me go home. So I had an hour drive home, which wasn't the greatest with these contractions, but I would have rather been home than at the hospital where they weren't going to do anything for me. I couldn't scream if I wanted to. I couldn't really do anything. So we made it home, and it was probably like 5 o'clock in the morning by the time we got home. So this is Saturday now, and we went over to my parents' house instead of coming here because it was just easier, and my mom could keep an eye on me, and if someone needed to drive us to the hospital because I needed Damian with me or anything, they could, and I could wake them up. So I screamed my head off the whole entire night. I didn't get any sleep at all. I had a contraction every 4 to 5 minutes. I didn't have a break at all. I tried getting in the tub. I got in the tub probably like 3 times throughout that whole day. The tub didn't help at all. The only thing that was nice was that I could move in the tub without like all my weight being on me, and that helped a little bit. So I was in labor all day until around 6 o'clock when my mom had made like food for all of us, and I was not about to eat it. I was in so much pain I couldn't focus on anything else. So Damian ended up eating, and I ended up going back in to lay down to see if I could get some sleep somehow. I couldn't, and they just kept getting worse. So my mom came in and said, "I'm done, like we're not doing this. You're going to the hospital." And I didn't want to go because of what had happened the night before, and them telling me that I wasn't in real labor. And with like your first baby, you don't really know when you're in labor. My water didn't break or anything, so I had just thought like, okay, well, it's gonna get worse, and I'm not really in labor, but I was. So my mom said that we were going to the hospital that's 20 minutes away from our house, which isn't the hospital I was supposed to deliver at because my OB doesn't go there. My OB only goes to a hospital that's an hour away from where we live, and there was no way I was making it in a car another hour to get checked in. So we ended up going to the hospital that's only 20 minutes away. They do have an OB floor and everything, so it wasn't like they weren't like capable of delivering him. So we ended up getting there, and we had to go in through the ER because we didn't tour this hospital. We didn't know who was going to deliver the baby, didn't know anything. So they brought me up to triage in the OB floor, and they checked me right away, like didn't make me wait or anything. They checked me right away, and I was 4 to 5 centimeters. So as soon as she knew that I was 4 to 5 centimeters, she had me like signing a bunch of paperwork because I hadn't done the pre-registration for this hospital. I hadn't done anything because I didn't think I was going to deliver at a different hospital. She asked me if I ended up wanting the epidural, and I did because this hospital did not have water birth, so I couldn't even do that for pain. And I hadn't slept in 3 days, so I was over it. I wanted sleep. I wanted the pain to just go away so I could sleep at least for an hour. Like, that's all I wanted. They ended up putting us in a room right away, and from then on, we got in the room, and my mom was there because my mom had drove us to the hospital. My dad ended up coming so that he could pick up my mom so that she could go back home. As soon as we got in the room, they gave me morphine so that the pain would go away a little bit. Like, I would still know that the pain was there. The morphine does not take away the pain. You're just so loopy that you don't realize that you're in pain. Like, you could still feel your contractions, but you're just so loopy that you can't, like, do anything. And at this hospital, they give it to you before they give you your epidural, just so you're kind of more relaxed when you're getting your epidural. I am not a big fan of needles. I will get a shot if I need to, obviously, because I need to get it. I just sit there for it. Not a big fan of the epidural just because I knew you had to get a numbing, like, needle first, and then you have to get, it's not really a needle, it's like almost like a back catheter put inside of you. So I wasn't really excited for it, but at this point I was full-blown excited for it. I was ready for it. The anesthesiologist came in, and my mom stayed in the room with me while I got the epidural because only one person's allowed to stay in the room with you. And Damian is not the best person to have with me when I am not sure about something and I'm in pain, because like, I don't yell at my mom when I'm in pain and everything, and she'll tell me, like, you need to stop, like, and, like, I'll listen because, like, she's been through this before, like, she's given birth multiple times, and Damian was all for it. He was like, you want your mom in the room while you get your epidural, I'm fine with that. So him and my dad went out and stayed out the room while they did it. It took maybe 5 minutes for him to do it. and it was perfectly fine. It did pinch like a little bit when he put like a local anesthetic in. It's just a shot of it, so it numbs the area so you don't feel it as much. That's the only part that hurt. It just stung a little bit. I couldn't even feel the epidural going into my spine. It was fine. So I ended up obviously getting sleep after I got my epidural because I hadn't slept, and it took away all of my pain. The anesthesiologist was like, you're still gonna feel pressure and everything. I didn't feel anything at all, so I was fine. Like, it didn't have any like bad side effects on me. I got to go to sleep and I was happy. About every 2 hours a nurse would come in and check on me. They would check how far along I progressed, and they check my fluids because I was still on fluids, just because I couldn't get up because I had the epidural. And they would check my catheter bag because when you have an epidural you obviously can't move around, so you have to get a catheter put in, and that probably hurt way more than my epidural. It's just really uncomfortable. It's like pulling on like your lady parts, and it feels like it's just gonna fall out all the time, and I didn't like it. That's the only thing that I could feel in my body, except like I couldn't feel the contractions, but I could feel it moving around. So they would come in every so often and they would move me from side to side, so like I didn't have to sit in one spot, because your body does start to hurt because you're just sitting in one spot for the whole time. So she checked me like every 2 hours. Every 2 hours I was progressing. I went from 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 and then to 8. I was at 8 when my water broke, I do believe. Damian says I was not, but I do recall her saying that I was 8 centimeters and that my water broke, because the time before when she checked me, she said, oh, I feel a sack of water just like sitting there, and they weren't trying to like break my water or anything. They did put me on Pitocin just to try to speed things up, because they obviously didn't want me in labor for a wicked long time, and I wasn't progressing as fast as they would have liked me to. So I was on a Pitocin drip. So I was progressing with a Pitocin every single 2 hours, which was nice. My water broke at 8 centimeters, and then like maybe the next time she checked me it was less than 2 hours and I was already at 10, and she got another nurse so I could start pushing. There was only 2 nurses in the room when I started pushing, because I pushed for a half an hour, kind of like practice pushing, but he wasn't coming down, so I had to labor down, which is when they sit you up like you're in a seat and they take out the bottom part of where like your lady parts are, so that there's no pressure sitting there, so he can just like fall down but not fall down. Obviously there's still a bed underneath you. So they let me do that for about a half an hour, I do think it was either half an hour or an hour, and they came back in because his heart rate was just not doing well every time I got a contraction, so he needed to come out. So I ended up starting to push. I still had only 2 nurses in the room. The nursery nurse did come in to set up everything, because obviously I was having a baby within the hour, and of course he decided to come like right when like they're getting ready to do shift change. So none of these nurses could do like their shift change stuff because I was ready to push him out. So she was getting everything ready, and they were letting me push, and the nurse had to step out for a minute. One of the nurses that was helping me push, they were both holding my legs, so she asked Damian if he could come over and hold my leg for me so he could help me. And Damian had gotten the same like 24-hour bug that I had on Thursday, so he was not feeling the greatest, which kind of sucks because he couldn't really be as involved as he wanted to be. So he came over to hold my leg, and I was in between contractions, and I had looked over at him, and his whole entire face was white, and I had asked if he was okay because he didn't look okay at all, and he was like, no, I really don't feel good. And the nurse was like, are you not okay with like gruesome stuff like this? And he was like, no, like I'm fine with it, I just have like, I'm sick. So he ended up having to go sit back down because he was going to either pass out or throw up, and they obviously can't give him anything. Like, it would have been great if they could have given him like Zofran or something, but they couldn't because he's obviously not a patient. So I ended up having to hold my own leg, and you don't realize like how heavy your body parts are until you can't feel them, and that went over fine, but it was really hard to hold it up. I started pushing around 5:30 on Sunday in the morning. This is Sunday the 13th of January. and I kept pushing. So they did end up calling the doctor around 6:45. She got there by around 6:12, I think. And I pushed, and he ended up coming out at 6:26 in the morning. And now he wants to make noise. If he makes noise, he's just eating. So he ended up coming out at 6:26 and everything was fine. I delivered my placenta, and about 5 to 10 minutes after I got sewed up and everything, because I did get a 3-degree tear, I was just started to get this really bad pain in my lower uterus area, and they didn't understand what was going on. They ordered an ultrasound. Ultrasound came, everything looked normal. I did end up peeing myself twice, on the bed and everything, once after another. As soon as she changed the bed and everything, I just full-blown peed again. And I obviously couldn't get up because they had taken my catheter out, but I couldn't still move my legs, so I didn't have a choice but to pee myself twice. And I decided the third time I was not gonna pee myself, and I called for my nurse and I asked her if she could help me go to the bathroom. So that's what ultimately was the pain that I was feeling. My bladder was full 3 times over what it should have been, so it was pushing on everything and it was causing me to be in excruciating pain. But after, it was fine. And that is it for my labor and delivery story. There will probably be a labor recovery story because there's a lot more that happened afterwards that's just not part of my labor. That should be coming right after this video. I promise I won't be gone for another over 4 weeks. It's been over 4 weeks. And we will see you guys soon.